We all know that Inside Out 2 is a movie made for teenagers and kids. But did you know that there are plenty of details in the film that only adults manage to notice? Naughty glance. When Riley's parents drop her and her two friends, Bree and Grace, off at hockey camp, they're kicking off the most important part of the movie for us, the viewers, but also for the protagonist and her emotions. But it seems it's important for them too. After all, many of us might not realize it, but as much as they love their kids, sometimes parents enjoy it when the house is just for them, if you catch my drift. This is made even clearer by the look Riley's dad gives her mom, biting his lip. That's absolute evidence that, at least for him, the plans for the next few days involve a lot of fun and love. Who knows? Thanks to this hockey camp, maybe we'll see the Emotions boss getting a little brother or sister in Inside Out 3. I'd find that hilarious if it happened. There's plenty more things only adults noticed in Inside Out 2 on our list. Rocky Balboa. Right at the beginning of the film, we see Joy narrating it as if it were a major sports event, like the Super Bowl, Riley's game, and I love that part. Many of us might not be familiar with this, but this definitely caught the attention of adults in the film, especially those who are into sports. But the most interesting part isn't even that. When Anger enters the scene, notice he's making hand motions that are actually little punches. This is a clear reference to boxers entering the ring just minutes before their fights. And at moments like these, 10 out of 10 adults will immediately think of the most famous boxing film saga in history, Rocky. No doubt, when it comes to boxing matches and music, you might not realize it, but it's all connected to the films of the famous Italian stallion and his fights focused on never giving up, even though he was always the underdog. Take it from me, Rocky is culture, and one of the best kinds out there. Family Island. Another thing we see happening in the early moments of Inside Out 2 is when the Emotions are observing Riley's mind islands. And the Family Island, which was so large and vibrant at the end of the second film, is now practically gone. It's so much so that Joy needs to give Sadness binoculars just to see it. This situation is definitely something adults understand well, since this family island within each of us also changes size as time passes. It's very large during childhood and loses some space to the friendship island as we enter adolescence. Likewise, as puberty fades, the family island becomes larger again, becoming the biggest of all. Surely adults must have thought about this when they saw this scene and the dynamics of the islands in Inside Out 2. Die Hard. One of the coolest things we see throughout the film is Joy's decision to send Sadness back to the Emotions Control Center to hassle anxiety a bit. For this, Joy uses an air duct that sends the blue emotion back to where they had come from. What's most interesting about all this is that originally, this idea of sending Sadness back was much bigger and more important, making the emotion parody the movie Die Hard, which was released in the 80s and 90s, where Sadness would roughly represent the protagonist John McClane. The blue emotion would have a headband tied around its head, a walkie-talkie taped to its waist, and be barefoot, just like John in Die Hard. If this had actually happened in the film, several adults would definitely have immediately recalled this historically iconic action film that marked their childhood. So now, if you're a fan of animated films, prove it and comment below #Pixar in honor of the mother of all animated films, including Inside Out 1 and 2. Apple commercial. Speaking of old TV moments, one of the most well-known ones that adults actually noticed long before the release of Inside Out 2 is the representation of anxiety on that giant screen, while several of Riley's mind workers listened attentively and followed the orders of the orange emotion. In reality, this part of the film was almost entirely inspired by an old Apple commercial where the company, still in its infancy in the market, took on the world's largest technology company at the time, IBM. Sure, this is definitely a very old reference from 1984, but probably some of the film's viewers will recall this reference, and the older you are, the more likely you are to remember it too. Nostalgia. Throughout Inside Out 2, as hinted in the trailers, we discover that there weren't just 4 new emotions in Riley's head, but 5, where the 5th emotion was nostalgia itself, responsible for looking back on memories with a lot of longing, which is basically all it does, hence its representation as an elderly lady with glasses holding a cup of tea. Regarding this, when you're very young, the feeling of nostalgia naturally is very small, because your amount of experiences is still quite limited compared to an adult. That's why, the older you get, the stronger the longing for memories of the past becomes, which makes a lot of sense because every passing day makes the past more distant, right? It's exactly for this reason that the emotion of the little old lady appeared and quickly disappeared, since Riley is still growing up and will experience many more special moments that she'll fondly remember. So, rest assured that adults understood the importance of this emotion much more and have a much better understanding of how it develops over time. Little envy. Many wondered when they saw the new emotions, why is envy so small? Without a doubt, this was one of the questions that most adults didn't ask themselves when they saw the character, as many understood why Pixar designed the green emotion with these characteristics. That's because people with more life experience know that even the smallest hint of envy can have enormous consequences. So it really makes sense for her to be very small, because adults know that the actions and harm caused by someone envious are not easy to quantify. Big embarrassment. The same applies to embarrassment. Remember that despite Inside Out 2 being a movie made for teenagers and children, it was created and produced by adults. And for this reason, these same adults intentionally made embarrassment much larger than all the other emotions. This was done to represent that during puberty, many of the things teenagers find embarrassing or extremely embarrassment-full are actually trivial. In fact, the importance we give to certain things is much greater than they actually deserve to be. And that's why embarrassment is huge, while also being completely harmless, always hiding away and even helping sadness, their crush, to hide from anxiety. And if you're new here and enjoy Inside Out, you've come to the right place. So don't waste time and subscribe to the channel right now. Hidden secret. Since we're talking about things that are extremely disproportionate, there's also that hidden secret tucked away in a corner inside the vault where the old emotions were suppressed. It calls itself Riley's most dangerous hidden secret. This, let's say, excess becomes even clearer at the end of the film when kind-hearted Joy returns to the vault and tries to free the secret from the vault, but it insists it can't leave and she should leave it alone. We end up discovering that it was actually a silly secret about something Riley did many years ago, damaging a rug in her house. But the truth is, the character would be like a continuous being and the secret would only change over time, always represented by the same figure. And as we can see, most of the time our deepest secrets are just simple, silly things that wouldn't make any difference if revealed today. Adults looking back understand this like no one else. Friendships. Another very interesting aspect addressed in Inside Out 2 that makes total sense, especially for older viewers who watch the film, is all the issues surrounding friendship. Just to recap, when Riley moves from Minnesota to California, she ends up losing close contact with all her friends from her old town, so she had to start fresh in San Francisco. With the news that her two best friends were going to another school, Riley felt that same feeling of losing friends she had a year earlier in the first film. Those who are older know very well that at this stage of life, having or not having friends influences how we feel in a somewhat profound way, so the insecurity of being away from friends is something that makes anyone who has been through it quite apprehensive. So, in other words, we perfectly understand all of Riley's frustration. New groups. And as we go through life, we're always changing environments, naturally joining new groups of people, whether it's changing schools, starting high school, going to college, or even starting a new job or moving to a new address. Each of these new situations leads us to meet new people and at the same time participate in different groups, which is good on one hand because we meet more people, just like Riley did, who despite growing distant from her two best friends, now has a new group of friends with Val and the hockey team she'll live with and grow closer to. So this certainly isn't the first time Riley will go through this, and it won't be the last time either. I'm sure all adults know this very well, but one thing I know for sure is that Inside Out 2 is definitely a very good animated film. And since we know you enjoy cartoons and animated films, we're leaving these two videos for you right now on the screen. Choose one and watch, because you'll surely enjoy it.